empty chair in row 3. It was supposed to be one of the biggest days of my life. The air smelled like freshly cut grass and melting sunscreen. The folding chairs creaked beneath us as hundreds of caps bobbed in the sun. People were laughing, clapping, holding bouquets. It was loud, joyfully loud, but my eyes were fixed on the third row. It had been reserved. 3 seats. I'd told the coordinator weeks ago. My family will be there. But they weren't. The first time I glanced over, I told myself they were just running late. Traffic, maybe. A wrong turn. The second time, the first group of names had already been called. Still no one. By the third glance, I stopped pretending. They weren't coming. I looked down at my hands, clenched tightly in my lap. My palms were damp, but my face was dry. I hadn't earned tears somehow. Just this quiet, sharp awareness. I had made it. I had done everything right. 4 years, 2 jobs, endless nights of studying until my eyes burned. And not even a phone call that morning. Just a text from my mom. You know your sister needs us today. Her baby shower is once in a lifetime. Family comes first. Family comes first. I guess I just wasn't part of that definition. People around me were cheering as names were called. A girl behind me squealed as her mom screamed from the stands, "That's my baby." And I sat there, breathing through it, applauding when I was supposed to, smiling faintly when my name was read. I stood, I crossed the stage, I shook the hand. I took the photo. But in every frame, my eyes are slightly to the left, toward the chair that stayed empty. You can't see disappointment in a graduation photo. It doesn't show up like that. It lives in the silence after the applause. When the ceremony ended, people were hugging their families, taking selfies, throwing caps. I walked straight to my car. No one chased me. I sat there for a while before starting the engine. My gown was bunched in the back seat. My cap was tilted on the dash. I stared out the windshield, watching the sidewalk fill with congratulations and flowers. Then I looked at my phone again. No missed calls. No, we're proud of you. Nothing. Just that message, still sitting there. Unread, even though I'd read it a dozen times. Family comes first. I shifted into drive, and for the first time, I wondered what it would feel like to stop hoping they'd ever show up. You know she needs this more than you. The weeks leading up to graduation felt like I was sprinting toward a finish line no one else could see. Finals, job interviews, a speech I'd been chosen to give for my department. I was exhausted and excited in equal parts. Every day felt like something I'd worked years for was finally taking shape. At dinner one night, I started talking about my speech. I mentioned how nervous I was, how much it meant to be selected. My dad nodded without looking up from his phone. My mom was already scrolling through baby shower centerpiece ideas. "That's great," she murmured, then turned to my sister. "Did you decide on the cupcakes or the cake pops?" I stopped mid-sentence. I didn't say anything. I just watched as my sister launched into a debate about frosting colors. She was glowing, literally glowing, 8 months pregnant, radiant, and completely absorbing every ounce of attention in the room. I smiled, or something like it. Later that week, I brought up the graduation ceremony. I was standing in the kitchen while my mom folded laundry. I asked casually if they'd gotten the invite from the school. She looked up. "Oh, right. That's the same weekend as the shower, isn't it?" My heart dipped. "Yeah, Saturday. I walk at 10, she hesitated. Well, we'll see. You know your sister needs this right now. I didn't respond right away, just nodded. That phrase stayed with me for days. You know she needs this more than you. It rolled around in my head while I sat in the library until midnight, finishing final papers, while I practiced my speech in the mirror, while I imagined looking into the crowd and seeing my family cheering. Need. What does need mean? I had needed them too. Maybe not with swollen ankles or a crib to assemble, but I had needed to feel seen, celebrated, loved. Instead, I got a group text a week later with a pastel pink invitation attached. My mom sent it out to friends, aunts, cousins. The shower was set for the exact same day. Brunch, games, matching outfits. No one mentioned my ceremony again. Not once. And I realized something I had been trying not to see for years. In this family, crisis gets attention. Loud emotions, messy problems, broken plans, those were the things that made people move. But quiet effort, quiet pride, that just faded into the background. I was never going to be the one who needed them enough to be seen. Graduation day and the quiet drive home. The drive home felt longer than it was. My robe was crumpled in the back seat, still holding the shape of my body, like it hadn't realized the moment was already over. I kept one hand on the wheel and the other resting in my lap, trying not to let it shake. At a red light, I looked over and saw a girl standing by her car, wrapped in her father's arms. A bouquet of sunflowers peeked out of the back seat. Her mom was taking pictures, beaming. There were balloons tied to the side mirror, gold foil numbers twisting in the breeze. The light turned green. I drove on. Every turn felt too sharp, every street too quiet. I didn't even play music. Just the soft hum of the engine and the occasional tap of my fingers on the steering wheel, like I was trying to keep rhythm with a version of the day that might have gone differently. When I pulled into the driveway, the contrast hit me like a wall. Laughter spilled from the house. The front door was wide open, a pink banner stretched across the entryway. Welcome, baby. There were shoes scattered on the porch, voices shouting from the kitchen, music playing too loud from someone's phone. I stepped inside and immediately felt like a guest. No one looked up. I walked past a pile of gifts wrapped in soft yellows and pinks. The table was covered in cupcakes and plastic champagne flutes. My mom was laughing with two neighbors I barely recognized. My dad was setting up some kind of party game. And there, in the center, my sister, radiant and glowing, her hand resting gently on her stomach, waved at me like I had just come back from the grocery store. Hey, did it go okay? She asked. I nodded once. Yeah, that was it. No one asked for photos. No one said congratulations. No one even noticed the cap still sitting on my dashboard. It was like it hadn't happened at all. I stood there for a moment, letting the sound of everyone else's celebration wash over me. Then I slipped upstairs, peeled off the robe, and folded it carefully into the back of my closet. And just like that, graduation was over. I stopped trying to be seen. After graduation, something inside me shut off. Not in a loud, dramatic way. It was quieter than that. I stopped going home unless I had to. I stopped texting back right away. I spent long hours in the campus library, even though classes were over and most students had already left for the summer. There was something comforting about being surrounded by books and silence. No baby talk, no loud voices, just the low hum of the air conditioning and the gentle scratch of a pen against paper. Most nights, I'd sit in the far corner by the window, watching the sky darken while my laptop screen glowed. I didn't even have anything urgent to work on, but staying busy made the emptiness feel useful. One evening, while I was pretending to organize old coursework, one of my professors walked by. She paused, looked at me for a moment, and said softly, "You've been here a lot lately. Everything okay?" It caught me off guard. No one had asked me that in weeks. I swallowed and nodded. "Just tired," I said. She gave me a small, knowing look, but didn't press. Just said, "Well, you don't always have to be," then walked away. Her words sat with me long after she left. You don't always have to be. But I did. I had to be okay, because nobody else was going to check twice. That's when the thought first came. Just a whisper at the back of my mind. What if I left? What if I started over somewhere they wouldn't forget I existed? I didn't tell anyone, not even my friends. I barely had the energy to keep up appearances, let alone explain the ache I carried. Then one night, during dinner, I was home for the weekend. My dad was balancing a spreadsheet on his laptop while my mom passed around ultrasound photos. My sister was talking about crib colors. I asked casually if they'd help with rent next semester, just until I found a job. My dad didn't even look up. "You're lucky we're even helping now," he said. "We've got your sister's baby coming." That was the moment the whisper turned into something louder, something that sounded like a plan. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I just nodded, stood up from the table, and cleared my plate. That night, I opened my laptop and started searching for transfer deadlines. Not out of spite, out of necessity. Because if they weren't going to see me here, maybe I needed to go somewhere they couldn't ignore me. The folder on my desktop. It started with a blank document and a blinking cursor at 2:14 a.m. The house was quiet. The only sound was the soft tick of the hallway clock and the low hum of my laptop fan. I sat at the desk in my childhood bedroom, walls still lined with school photos and old posters no one had bothered to take down. I opened a new folder on my desktop, hovered for a second, then typed somewhere else. It felt childish at first, dramatic, like something out of a story. But I didn't delete it. I stared at the name, then dragged it to the corner of the screen, where no one would notice if they happened to use my computer. That folder became my secret, my escape hatch. Inside it, I started building a new version of my life, one that didn't revolve around being overlooked or waiting for someone to care enough to ask how I was doing. I gathered transcripts, test scores, writing samples. I rewrote my resume 4 times. I stayed up late, crafting personal statements that felt raw and honest. Lines like, "I want to be seen not for how quiet I am, but for what I've done despite that." Every piece of it came together in silence. No one knew. While my mom was planning postnatal classes for my sister and my dad was assembling a stroller, I was learning how to write about myself like I mattered. It was the first time I had ever done something so big without needing their approval or their applause. And there was something powerful about that. Lonely, yes. Quiet, but powerful. Each time I saved a new document, each school I researched, each email I drafted but didn't send. It all added up to something I couldn't name yet, but felt real in a way nothing else had in a long time. I didn't even fantasize about them reacting. I didn't imagine dramatic goodbye scenes or surprise congratulations. I just imagined leaving, walking away without asking permission. There's a strange kind of hope in secrecy, the kind that feels like lighting a candle in a locked room. No one sees it, but you do. And somehow, that's enough to keep it burning. Somewhere between the third personal essay and the fifth round of editing my resume, I realized I wasn't doing this to prove anything. I was doing it because I was done waiting. And whether they ever noticed or not, I had already started to go. Can you babysit? After the baby was born, the house stopped being a home and became a shrine. Everything smelled like formula and lavender wipes. The living room was overtaken by a swing set that played lullabies on a loop. Bottles in the sink, burp cloths on the counters, pastel onesies hanging on chairs. It wasn't that I didn't love him. My nephew. He was soft and warm and helpless in that pure, blinking new to the world kind of way. But he wasn't mine. And yet, somehow, I became part of his schedule. Can you babysit this afternoon? Can you run out and grab diapers? Can you pick up formula on your way back? It started small, just once or twice. Then it became assumed. They didn't ask, they informed. There was always some reason I was the most available. You're not working full time yet. You don't have kids. You're just at the library, right? So I said yes. At first, because it was easier than arguing. Because I thought maybe, just maybe, showing up would earn me a place again. But it never did. No one noticed when I missed meals or deadlines. No one thanked me when I stayed 3 hours longer than I said I could. And then came the call I missed. I had been waiting for weeks to hear back from my top transfer school, the one I barely let myself say out loud. I gave them my availability, kept my phone charged, checked my email like it was a lifeline. That day, my sister called last minute. She needed to nap. Could I just come by for a few hours, just until the baby settled down? I hesitated, almost said no. But then came the guilt, the unspoken pressure. So I said yes. Again. The baby cried for 2 hours straight. I walked him in circles, humming softly, rocking back and forth until my arms ached. My phone sat on the coffee table. I didn't hear it ring. By the time I checked, there was a missed call, a voicemail. They'd tried to reach me for an interview window, said to respond as soon as possible. My chest tightened. I called back, left a message, emailed twice. But I knew how these things worked. They moved fast. No one at home even noticed my panic. My mom walked in halfway through my second email and asked if I could stop by the store later. I told her I couldn't, that I was busy. She blinked. You're not even working full time. What else do you have going on? And that was it. That was the moment the quiet frustration turned into something sharp. It wasn't just about being overlooked anymore. It was about being erased. My time didn't matter. My goals didn't matter. Only what I could give. Only how useful I could be. I didn't argue. I didn't explain. I just nodded. And later that night, I opened the folder on my desktop again. Not to edit, not to plan, but to hit submit. The decision was made. Not if, but when. The letter that didn't deserve an announcement. It came through on a Wednesday. The email subject line was simple, nothing flashy, just the name of the university and a small dash. Admission decision. I stared at it for a long time before clicking. The glow of my laptop was the only light in the room. It cast shadows on the wall, stretched across the stacks of paper on my desk. My breath caught in my throat. I didn't dare let myself hope too much. But there it was. Congratulations. We're pleased to offer you admission. The words blurred a little as I reread them, just to make sure. I closed my eyes, pressed my fingers to my lips, let out one long, quiet breath. I didn't scream. I didn't jump up or run down the hall. I didn't call anyone, because there was no one to call. No one who'd been waiting with me. No one who'd ask, "Did you hear yet?" It was just mine. And maybe that made it better. I sat back in my chair and read the email again, slower this time, letting it sink in. Somewhere else wanted me, somewhere that didn't know the shape of my silence or the way I disappeared in crowded rooms. Later that night, my phone buzzed. A FaceTime call. My parents and sister huddled around the dining table. "Look who's crawling," my mom beamed, angling the camera down at the baby, inching forward on a soft playmat. Everyone cheered. My dad clapped. My sister laughed like she hadn't slept in days. I smiled, told them he was adorable, said all the right things. No one asked about me. And for the first time, I didn't feel the need to fill the space. They laughed, signed off, and the screen went black. I turned back to my laptop, opened the folder marked somewhere else, and began checking the housing options. I was going. They just didn't know yet. And somehow that made it feel even more real. One last family dinner. I went to one last family dinner before I left. The house smelled like the same faint mix of takeout and baby powder. It always did. The worn wooden table was still cluttered with sippy cups and toy cars. My parents were there, naturally, talking nonstop about daycare options, diaper brands, and the new minivan my sister had picked out. The way their voices lit up about those things, you'd think the baby was the only thing that mattered. I sat quietly, picking at my food, listening. No one asked me how my week had been. No one glanced my way when I shared the small wins I'd managed. Finishing my application, a scholarship I'd won, a recommendation letter I'd secured. It was like I was invisible. Halfway through the meal, I cleared my throat and said, "I was thinking, maybe I could move next semester." My mom paused mid-bite and looked at me with what I can only describe as gentle disbelief. "Why would you leave now?" she said, the question more like a statement. "Everything is fine." That was when the silence really settled over the table, thick and heavy. No one else said a word. I nodded slowly. Inside, something cracked. I knew this wasn't just a question about timing. It was a refusal, a way of saying I didn't belong here anymore, even when I was sitting at the same table. I looked around at the faces I'd known my whole life, feeling the weight of years spent trying to be seen, only to be swallowed by the noise of everything else. No tears, no shouting, just that quiet, aching truth. I was already gone. The meal ended, plates scraped, chairs shifted. I helped clear the table without a word, the room filled with the soft hum of everyday life that had somehow left me out. Later that night, I sat in my room, the faint light from the street lamp spilling over my desk. I pulled out my laptop and opened the folder named Somewhere Else. This dinner wasn't a goodbye. It was the final line in a story no one else wanted to read. And I was ready to write the next chapter on my own terms. Your email signature changed? Moving felt like stepping into a quiet, unfamiliar world. New campus, new dorm room, new routine. The walls were bare, the bed too small, and the silence too loud. I cried more than I expected, sometimes in the dark, sometimes curled up on the cold floor, wondering if I'd made a mistake. But it was my life now. Every day, I woke up reminding myself that this was the place I had chosen, the place where I could finally be seen, even if no one from home was watching. A few weeks in, I was settling into classes and trying to build a new rhythm when my phone buzzed. It was my mom. "Why does your email say you're at another university?" she asked, voice sharp but hiding something else. Hurt? Confusion? I swallowed, hesitated, then told her the truth. She sighed. A few days later, my dad called. "You're being dramatic," he said flatly. "You're making this into something it's not." I said nothing. Then my sister sent a text. "You could have at least said goodbye." I read it twice. I didn't respond. The guilt they tried to lay on me felt heavy, but it wasn't mine to carry. No one asked how hard it had been to pack up my life, to leave the place I once called home. No one wondered if I missed them or felt torn. Instead, I was the one who needed to explain, and I wasn't going to. I closed my phone and stared out the window at the unfamiliar city lights. They wanted me to come back, to fold myself neatly into their plans and timelines. But I was done fitting into spaces that didn't have room for me. This was the fallout, the price of choosing myself. And despite everything, I was still standing. I sent the dean my transfer papers and never looked back. I still remember the night I hit send on those transfer papers. The glow of my laptop screen was soft against the dark, quiet room. My fingers trembled slightly as I attached every document. The essays, the transcripts, the careful edits I'd made after hours of second guessing. That moment wasn't loud or dramatic. There was no cheering, no one watching me, just the steady pulse of my own heartbeat and the weight of everything I was leaving behind. Transferring wasn't just about a new school. It was about shedding a role I'd carried for years. The good daughter, the quiet one, who swallowed her own dreams to keep the peace. It felt like breathing for the first time. I didn't block my family. I didn't erase them from my life, like some people might expect. But I stopped answering every call, stopped explaining myself in the spaces where I wasn't seen. I began learning how to celebrate myself. One afternoon, a professor I barely knew emailed me to say I'd been nominated for an award. Recognition for not just academic excellence, but perseverance. For the first time, I didn't hesitate. I took a picture of myself in the sunlight, cap and gown, freshly pressed. I posted it on my own terms, with a caption that said simply, "Proud of how far I've come." Then I bought myself flowers, a small bouquet of wild daisies and lavender, something bright and imperfect and real. Standing there with those flowers in my hands, I felt a quiet kind of victory. Not the kind that demands applause, but the kind that settles deep in your bones and whispers, "You matter." I'm still learning what boundaries mean, how to hold them gently but firmly, how to love without losing myself. And I'm still writing that story, one where I'm the one who chooses when to stay and when to walk away. I sent the dean my papers, and I never looked back.